Welcome everyone to the Moreno Valley Writers Expo 2020. We're so glad that you can join us to support local authors and to celebrate the art of writing. As a reminder, please make sure that your microphones are muted and your videos are turned off to minimize distractions for the presenter. If you have any questions for our presenter, please type them in the chat box and we will pass them on to her. If you need any tech help, ask Charmaine Mendez from the Moreno Valley Public Library, and she will do her best to assist you. Now, I'm happy to introduce our guest speaker for this session. S.K. Murphy began her career as a freelance writer and journalist. In recent years, she has published 2 memoirs and a young adult novel. She lives in Southern California with 2 quirky cats and 1 very patient dog. She is the author of The Tainted Legacy of Bertha, Gifford, Ghost, Gramma, and Lessons I Learned from the Dogs Who Saved Me. Welcome, Kay, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks everybody who showed up. I'm looking at all the names of people who are joining the meeting, and hi. Hi from Calamasa. It's kind of good to see some familiar names, people that I haven't talked to in a long time, so that's really wonderful. Thanks for being here and for joining in on this meet and greet. And I do want to consider it a meet and greet. So at this point, I want to tell you, please be, you're more than welcome to ask any question that you would like to ask. As we're going along, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to talk about my books really briefly. I think you probably will have questions about one of the books, and so please put them in the chat. If you're unfamiliar with Zoom, you haven't used it a lot, if you just kind of move your cursor over, you'll see at the bottom of your screen there is the chat feature, and you can click on that. It will bring up the chat box, and then type your message at the bottom, type your question, and at the same time wave your hands so I know that you have a question and I'll try to get to them. And really briefly, my contact information, I'm on Twitter. If you are a beginning writer, I highly recommend that you have a Twitter account. There is a writing community there. It's #writing community. Especially if you're a beginning writer, there are people there that have lots and lots of information, advice to give. They're really great. So I'm on Twitter, and it's just @kayzpen, KAYZPEN, not S, @kayzpen on Twitter. @kayzpen on Instagram, mostly on Instagram. I just post pictures of my dog and my hikes, and he's really adorable, so it's worth going to Instagram just to see pictures of Thomas. And my email is very similar to my Instagram and Twitter handle. It's kayzpen@verizon.net. So if you read one of my books and you have questions after you read the book, you can always email me or just start a conversation. I love to get email. So what else? Oh, and I'm not here to sell books. I'm here to talk about books. But before this day, I sent Moreno Valley Library, and by the way, thank you Moreno Valley librarians for setting this up, for doing this event. Authors and writers really appreciate it. I'm sure the public does too. But I sent Moreno Valley Library copies of all 3 of my books, so they will be in the library. You don't have to buy them on Amazon, but they do exist on Amazon. And you can simply go to Amazon and put in a search for S.K. Murphy, and you'll find my author page. You'll find links to all 3 of my books. Or you can do a search. I don't like to promote Google, but you can Google me or use any search engine of your choice and just, again, put in my name, and that will take you to my blog, some of my other writing pieces, and my Amazon pages as well. So that's how to get in touch with me. And you can check my books out from the library. If you don't want to buy them on Amazon, that's fine too. So, okay, really quickly, just to introduce you to my books, and then I'll entertain questions. This book is Ghost Gramma. It's a young adult novel that I wrote in 30 days for NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, which is November, which is right now. There are people trying to get in 1,600 words a day as they're trying to get to writing 50,000 words in 30 days. And it's basically write a novel in 1 month. So in 2006, I had the crazy idea of doing NaNoWriMo, and I wrote my 1,600 words a day and wrote this little young adult novel that I had the idea for years before. I loved writing it. It was exhausting. It was wonderful. I love my characters. And I know someone would like it because my grandson did. And that was most important to me when he read it. He actually read it as an adult when he had jury duty. And he said, I have jury duty. Can you recommend something to read? So I recommended Ghost Gramma, and we had a good chat about it. And then it wasn't published for many years after. I kind of put it away because I thought if I wrote it in 30 days, it couldn't possibly be any good. But it turns out it was fairly decent. There's no graphic sex or violence in it, so that might be a turnoff for some people. But it's just a nice, sweet little novel. Then this book is The Dogs Who Saved Me. It is a memoir about my dogs. And if you talk to me very long, you will discover that I am a huge dog lover. And I was going through all the pictures of my dogs one summer, trying to organize them. And I decided that their stories needed to be told, and that if I told them in a memoir, I could then donate whatever royalties I got from that book to animal rescue. So I specifically wrote that book, The Dogs Who Saved Me, with the idea of donating all the proceeds to various animal rescues. It doesn't all go to one animal rescue. I decide, usually do the donations quarterly, sometimes annually, depending on how many royalties I've received. I kind of look at it and I look around. I like to donate to small local rescues because they're working very hard and they're not very well known. So if you did buy a copy of that book on Amazon, know that 100% of the proceeds of that book go to animal rescue. Okay, which brings me to this book, which is The Tainted Legacy of Bertha Gifford. Bertha Gifford was my great-grandmother. Until I was 35, I didn't know anything about her. And then one afternoon in the summer, sitting casually with my sister, drinking a cup of iced tea, glass of iced tea, I said something about being crazy in reference to myself. And my sister immediately responded with, yeah, like our great-grandmother. And I said, excuse me? And she said, yeah, you know, the one that was crazy, that killed all those people. And I said, excuse me, more? And she said, oh, Mom didn't tell you about that. We had her grandmother down on the farm in Missouri, killed some people, went to trial for it. I had no idea. I had no idea. So I called my mom and said, Mom, tell me about your grandma, the one that you lived on the farm with and who was accused of killing people. Tell me about that. And she wouldn't tell me, excuse me, she wouldn't tell me about her grandmother for the longest time. And It took her getting sick with pneumonia. I think she thought she was on her deathbed, and that was quite a time later, after I initially found out, that she finally called me and said, you asked about my great-grandmother, so here's what happened. And she told me the story of being a 10-year-old girl and living on the farm with her grandmother, and one day the sheriff came, drove up in the yard, asked to see her grandmother. My mom went and got her. She came out, drove away with the sheriff, and later she would go to see her, but she'd been arrested. And she was charged with initially multiple murders, and then they dropped them. They dropped the charges on 2 of them and just tried her for 1 murder. But my mother never actually knew what happened, because her mother told her, we're never going to talk about this. So when I finally got my mom to start talking about it, she was 76 years old. She had been 10 when her great-grandmother was arrested. So for 66 years, she'd held this secret. She hadn't talked to my family very much. She had told my sister about it. I don't even know if my father had known. My father died when I was young, so I don't know if my dad ever even knew about this secret that she carried. But after 66 years, she and I went back to Missouri to get some answers, and answers we got, and they were not the answers my mom was expecting. And that was very difficult for her, but it was quite the eye-opening experience. It changed my life. It changed her life. So I wrote a book about it. And that's The Tainted Legacy of Bertha Gifford. I never expected to write that book. When I started writing, I was 21 years old, and I envisioned a life for myself where I would train horses and write novels. And I ended up doing neither of those. I haven't had horses in years, and I don't really write novels, although I think I did see a question in the chat about whether I was working on anything currently. And in fact, I am writing a series of novels, but they're for middle grade students, maybe 5th grade, 6th grade age. And it's sort of an urban fantasy kind of thing. It'll be a 4-book series. I'm working on book 3 currently. And and none of those will be published until the entire series is done. I just insist on that. I could try to be looking for a publisher or independently publishing at this time, but I want to have all the books written before I start publishing on that. So that is what I'm working on currently. It's taken me much longer than I anticipated that it would to do those books. But I'm gaining momentum since I'm in the 3rd book now, and I don't think it will take me too much longer to finish the 3rd and then write the 4th. The 4th is going to kind of write itself. So those are my books. Who has questions? Did you ask questions and I just didn't see them? And I can go back, and I know you are all muted, so you can't really. I'm just going to scroll back to here. Oh, Zoe. What was your favorite part about writing The Dogs Who Saved Me? Oh, Zoe, to tell you the truth, I cried all through writing that book. I did nothing but cry. I didn't think it would be so hard, but the stories begin when I was a teenager. There's a little bit about when I was a child, but mostly when I was a teenager. And it brought back so much of the difficulty, the challenges that I had in high school. I think you can probably identify with that. I had a very wicked stepfather, a mother who wasn't very nurturing. It was a bad combination. I was a very introverted person. I didn't do well in high school socially. There was a lot going on, and thank goodness I had that one dog that I could come home to every day. So a favorite part, I'm not sure, probably the end, because as my life went on and I had different dogs, my life got better and better and better and better. It's wonderful now. I felt very blessed by the time I finished that book. So probably getting toward the end and writing about those last 3 dogs. And I didn't have Thomas then, so Thomas is going to have to have his own separate book. I promised him one day that I would write a book just about him because he deserves it. And then Cindy, you're doing the now. Yay, Cindy's doing the now. Oh, that's interesting that you leave the details out and do that later and just do the dialogue. That's an interesting way to do it. My process when I participated in the nano, to be really honest, Cindy, I had the first paragraph in my head and that's all. I didn't have an outline. And normally I don't write like that. I had no outline. I had no idea where I was going to go with the story, but I knew the premise of the story and I knew the first paragraph. And I sat down every morning and wrote 800 words before I went to work because I was still teaching high school then. And when I came home from work, I would eat dinner and write another 800 words. And during the day, I would try to think of where I left off in the morning so I could determine what I was going to write that night. And sometimes when I got to the evening, I had no idea. And sometimes in the morning when I woke up, I actually a few nights wrote until I fell asleep at the computer. And I would get up in the morning not remembering at all. And I would start scrolling through what I'd written the night before and think, hey, this isn't horrible. I don't remember writing it at all because I was half asleep, but it's okay. It's not terrible. And of course, you do a lot of editing afterward. The idea is get to 50,000 words out. So that's the way I did it. Okay, and then there's a question real quick. Josh, oh my gosh. Josh, do you mind that I'm going to tell everybody that you are chiming in from Vietnam? Thank you. I love you for that. I love all of you for being here. But Josh, Josh said it's 4 o'clock in the morning in Vietnam. So you are a sweetie for being here, Josh. I did do a couple of TV interviews about Bertha Gifford, my great grandmother. Oh my gosh. Okay. So if you're not looking at the chat, Josh's question is, how did it feel to talk about it in a medium in which you didn't have control over how your words were used and decontextualized by someone else? It felt awful. It didn't feel awful at the time. It felt awful afterward because you don't know at the time how much you're going to be edited. And to see the final product and to know that the story is told in the way the producer wants it to be told, not necessarily according to what you think or believe, is a really horrible feeling because you can't change it once it's out there for everyone to see. And it is out there. So I should probably mention that that particular episode of Deadly Women regarding my great-grandmother, Bertha Gifford, is available on YouTube. You can watch it for free if you want to. It's actually, you can just go to YouTube and put in Bertha Gifford and find it, but I think it's called Murderous Matrons. It's the Deadly Women episode entitled Murderous Matrons. Whatever. And it portrays her in a way that's wholly unrealistic. So that was a good question, Josh. Thank you for asking that. Wow. Okay, and for writers who are beginning to write, what piece of advice would you give them? Oh, I have a list. And I don't think we have time for the list. First and foremost, write every day or try to write every day or have a routine. So write 6 days a week or 5 days a week. Don't impose your writing upon the people that you love. find someone who likes you, maybe enough to read what you write, but can still be critical, and you're not so invested in them that if they say, I don't see anything good here, that you don't have to divorce them. That's my advice about that. And I have so much more, but that we don't have time for. Why do you think that you write young adult novels instead of adult fiction? Oh, that's a great question. Because when I wrote Ghost Gramma, that is really a good question. Thank you, Cindy. When I wrote Ghost Gramma, I was teaching high school, and I loved my students. I absolutely love my students. I was teaching at Upland High School at the time. I started out teaching at Moreno Valley High School, which is how I know Josh, who is now my friend. And I think I saw Michael's name in there. So Michael, who is also a writer now, who was formerly my student once upon a time, who is now an author and writer in his own right. But I was teaching at Upland at the time and absolutely just adored my students. They were great kids, and they started becoming characters to me. And so a lot of them, and they don't know it, are in the book as characters, both good, because the vast majority of characters in the book are wonderful. And the bad guy is based on a student I actually had, things he actually did that were bad. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I loved writing it so much. And I had a lot of material, because if I needed a hero or somebody, I was pulling from the students I actually had at that time and just putting them into the book. Most of them, their names are changed. There was one person whose name is the same, and I brought him the pages, and I actually brought the pages to school and said, can you read these? Because I don't want to change your name. I want it to stay the same in the book, and agree that it's okay to be published that way. And he did. So, but he was the only one I changed everybody out. Oh my gosh, there are so many great questions here, you guys, and I don't know. Author M.L. Welker is asking me my favorite necessary or quirky writing rituals. Oh dear, it really, really helps to have a cup of tea sitting right here. And if there's a cat over here on the desk, that's good too. But it really helps to have a cup of tea just to get started. I don't know what it is. I don't know why I feel like I have to make that cup of tea. But even if I don't drink it and it sits there and gets cold. And Cindy did say again, in case you're not following the chat, I want a friend that gets up early to call me like that. And I'm sure that she's referring to Josh will be your friend, Cindy. He's really a great guy. Okay, and I think we're way past our time, and I'm really sorry, but I think this is as much time as we have. They haven't interrupted to tell me to shut up yet, though.
Well, we do need to wrap. Oh, we need to wrap up now. But thank you so much, Kay. If anyone has any other questions, please email her. I put her email in the chat: kayzpen@verizon.net.
Thank you, everybody who came today. Is so much. I'm sorry if I didn't get to all of your questions, but just email me and I'll answer them.
Thank you so much, Kay, and good luck on your writing journey. So thanks to everyone in the audience for being here. And our next guest speaker is at 1:30, which is showing like 1 minute away.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome. Enjoy. I made a cup of tea, by the way, a few minutes ago.
All right, thank you.
So our next speaker at 1:30 will be Barbara J. Emery.